Welcome back to the After Dinner Leadership Podcast. Today we are tackling the one thing that changes everything, trust. And we're doing that with the master himself, Stephen M.R. Covey, the author of Speed of Trust and Trust and Inspire. What a wonderfully enriching and inspiring conversation. With the world demanding instant connection, we talk about trust being the ultimate advantage. I am confident you're going to get a lot from this episode, so get a notebook and pen ready and enjoy. Welcome, Stephen, to the After Dinner Leadership Podcast. It's lovely to have you.
Thank you, Simon. I'm excited to have this conversation. Thank you so much.
Equally. And many of our guests will know you and the work that you've done. And the seminal piece, Speed of Trust, is a great book. I've really enjoyed learning from that. And you also published Trust and Inspire, which we'll talk about later as well. But we're around this virtual dinner table, and I like to take our guests back to what food reminds you of your childhood. Many people will know your father was Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits. Is there a food that the Covey family that takes you back to your childhood table?
Well, I remember growing up, and it seemed like we had 5 great meals that we would rotate, and we had a lot of other things too. But there were 5 kind of staples and constants. But my favorite was always just the classic, the spaghetti and meatballs.
Okay.
And we'd have that. And I remember as a kid growing up, and I would try to figure out what night in that week we're going to get the spaghetti and meatballs, because I wanted to be there for that night. So, but I didn't turn down anything. So, but that one always reminds me of my childhood. Every time I have it to this day.
Yeah. Great, love that. And if you think about yourself as an early 20-something, what was memorable about you then?
I was filled with kind of hopes and some ambitions.
Yes.
And kind of was a little bit naive. But as I look back on it, I don't think it was a bad naivete, because I had a real hope and optimism for the world, and I think that it actually gave me a sense of vision and purpose, and
right.
And maybe a little altruistic, but I think we need that sense of altruism and that sense of contribution in life, and I kind of had that instilled in me from my parents, from my dad, from my mom, that life was about contribution, not just accumulation. And that was kind of instilled in me young, and so I went about life starting that way, and then I kind of got beat up along the way, but I still come back to it time and again, and I say, you know what, it's not a bad starting place.
It's a great starting place. Hey, I know somewhat of your father indirectly by reading his work and hearing him speak,
Yeah.
and the likes. I've just thought, I don't know anything about your mum. What did she teach you about leadership?
The power of focusing on and caring for the one. The one. See, the key to the many is the one. How you treat the one can have an impact on the many. And so when people on your team, if you're on a team and you really focus on maybe the member of the team that's struggling, hard to deal with, it'd be easy to kind of ignore that person or just say, I'm going to have nothing to do with them. But if you make the effort and invest in building the relationship with the one, even the difficult one sometimes, that tells the many that are around you that you would do the same for them too. And my mother always really focused on each of us children. Like you, I grew up in a big family.
Yes.
And on each of the children, as if we were the only child, and as if we were the favorite child. We all felt like we were the favorite. And it's because of her focus on each person uniquely, distinctly as an individual. And so we never felt like we were just part of a big family, one of many, but we always felt we were one of one. among
Yeah.
many.
Yeah, and I relate to that a lot. And I think it's one of my mum passed away a few years ago, and it was one of the reflections that we all had as we were with her, and thinking about how on earth did she achieve that? It's almost superhuman, 11 children and all of us feeling loved. It was incredible. What a superpower.
So it
And
sounds like
going
your
back,
mom.
yeah,
It sounds like your mom is like my mom. It's a
yes,
superpower, isn't it, to
yes, yeah,
to have each of the children feel that way.
yeah. It's
So that's
amazing.
great.
And more almost counterintuitive to what others,
Yeah,
maybe with just one child would think, well, how can I distribute that across more than one child or two children? It's amazing. Well, they clearly we meet two women who have done it very well.
absolutely.
And going back to your father, I know how
Yeah,
much you admire him and he's taught you as a leader. If you were going to squeeze one principle that's kind of lasted with you, what's that been? What's
yeah,
what's at the core of that, would you say?
yeah. So many principles, but if I
Mm.
were to say, okay, what is the most significant insight learning from my father would be this: that as good as my father was in public, as a teacher, as a speaker, as an author, and he was very, very good.
Yes.
But as good as he was in public, he was even better in private. As a husband to my mother, as a father to us kids, he was who he thought he was. He really believed what he taught and he lived it. He wasn't perfect, but he would come back to it time and again. He believed it, he lived it. And so there was a sense of integrity, of power that came from that. And I've seen this before where sometimes someone can be just a dazzling presenter and they get on stage and just entertain and dazzle the audience, and then they walk off stage and they're like a different person,
Yes.
arrogant, disrespectful. Well, my father was good on stage and he was better off stage with how he treated everyone, from the AV person to just the administrators, the organizers, the people, taking the tickets or the
Yes.
checking people in. He treated everyone with such immense respect, and he would take the time to listen. And I just saw this time and time again. And so it's what I shared at his funeral, that the greatest tribute that I could give to my father, that is also the most honest and authentic, is that as good as he was in public, he was even better in private. And
That's
I know
amazing.
that because, as a child, you see the private side. And
Yeah.
again, he wasn't perfect. No one is. But uh, he really lived what he taught. He believed it and he lived it. And there was power that came from that kind of integrity.
Amazing. That's so lovely to hear. That's quite moving, actually. So thank you for sharing that. We love to ask each of our guests, which three leadership lessons do you wish you'd learned earlier? And I'd love to get a sense of that from you, Stephen, if we could.
Yes. So I thought about this, and I've come up with different ones at different times. So this kind of reflects where
Yeah,
I am today.
sure.
So um, so here's three. The first is this: that trust is the one thing that truly changes everything. And therefore, if you as a person and as a leader, if you can build trust and start with trust, to be trusted, that's going to impact everything else that you do in significant and profound ways. And I learned that when we merged our company, Covey Leadership Center, with our arch competitor, Franklin Quest, to form
Yeah.
Franklin Covey. Two great companies coming together, but we had been competitors, and we're merged together, and we don't trust each other because of the history and the past,
Yeah. Yeah.
and everything was impacted by that. We started to interpret agendas and project motives and wonder what they're doing, and we couldn't We couldn't collaborate very well. We couldn't innovate. We became internally focused because we didn't fully trust each other. Not because we'd done bad things, in the merger, but it was our prior history coming into it. And then it was impacting, though, everything that we were trying to do together. When we stopped and said, we got to start with trust. We got to earn trust with each other and focus on that. We actually moved the needle, and we went from low trust to high trust when we became intentional about it. And when we did that, it changed everything. Suddenly
Yes.
we were creative, innovative. It was energy and joyful. It was fun, and we moved fast, and we achieved the impact of the merger. And it was from that where I wrote the book, The Speed of Trust.
Yeah.
Is that
I
I
was
learned this
reading that.
insight. This changes
Yeah.
everything.
I was reading that again, and you were very open about the dilemma you were facing, and it made me reflect on, I've been in the similar industry for nearly 30 years, 27 years, something like that. And I've had my challenges in terms of relationships with people who we're teaching the importance of trust and communication, in the public square, if you like, and yet we've got this breakdown of trust that has happened in the relationship. So we're kind of publicly teaching this and then struggling in our own relationship with something along those lines. And I would imagine it would have been similar for you and your colleagues there. These were principles and values that both of you hold dear, but you've got two organizational cultures merging into each other, and some assumptions about what the intent is and what's driven that. It seemed like, from what I read, a moment where you were going in for a meeting, which had a different agenda, and you made a judgment call to kind of almost tear the agenda up and reset it so that trust was at the core. How did you make that judgment call? And like, it is potentially risky in terms of, hold on a minute, we're here for X, and now you're saying we're going to talk about Y. How did you make that happen so people were willing to engage in what clearly ended up being a very healthy dialogue?
Yes, I appreciate your bringing this up because it really was maybe the turning point in the whole
Mm.
merger, and there was such kind of low trust, and it was again, it wasn't that people were bad people.
Yeah.
These were good people with good values. It was simply that we saw the world differently, and
Yes.
we had different approaches to literally everything. And the question was, hey, is this a merger or is this a takeover? And
Yeah.
who's in charge and who's making these decisions, and are they qualified to do it? And it looks like there was kind of the Covey side and the Franklin side. Whose side is winning? That was the kind of the question. And I remember I was the leader, but I'd come from the Covey side, so there was some skepticism from the Franklin side that I was maybe favoring and doing these things. And I was doing my best to kind of be objective by knowing that I naturally was subjective, and I brought in people to help me become more objective.
Yeah.
But I remember going to this meeting. This was going to be on strategy, and I was going to take an hour and lay out the strategy. But I just knew that everyone was. The meeting after the meeting would have been, well, he's talking about strategy, but what about, the decision he made on this or on that, and all these other things that are going on. I knew that everyone really wanted to talk about what's happening, who's making these decisions, why are you making this decision, and who's being favored, and all these things. And so I just thought, we're kind of dancing around the real issues. We're skirting them.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
just came in and I decided, what do I have to lose? Right now, there's distrust. So let me be real and authentic. Just open myself up and be transparent. Declare my intent. Look, we can talk about strategy, but I came prepared to do that. But I'd rather talk about what you'd really like to talk about. And
Yeah.
I want to be open about it. And I'd like to just open it up around the challenges of this merger. Tell me what's on your mind. My goal is to listen, to try to understand. And it was risky. You're exactly right. It could have, people could have. And at first, I think some people were questioning, Does he have an agenda to this? But then when they saw that I
So,
really was there to listen, to understand, and I wasn't trying to defend or evaluate or judge, but rather to understand, then people got real. And I, we ended up going not just an hour, but the entire day having this
yeah,
discussion. And then I captured things without judgment. And I made some commitments on paths we would go forward to try to address some of these issues and processes to involve people to do it. And it changed everything. We walked out of that meeting having built more trust in one day than we had in the prior year that we'd been struggling in this merger. So, we
incredible.
still had
Yeah,
to now do what we said we were going to do, but we were in a new position, in a new place. And it was from that experience that I realized that our intent matters, and we need to declare our intent. We need to be open and transparent, even declare ourselves as leaders, what we're trying to do and why, give the why behind the what. And that kind of openness, that kind of vulnerability, transparency actually builds trust because we're real, we're relatable. People can see themselves in us and vice
yes,
versa.
yes.
So those are some of the learnings from that.
Incredible. Thank you. I appreciate being so open about it. What's the second lesson you wish you'd learned earlier, Stephen?
Yes, this that leadership is a choice, not a position.
Hmm.
So every one of us can lead, whether or not we're supervising people. that's
Yeah,
the idea that to be a leader you have to have people under you. So quote under you, um, and that you got to be supervising others to make you a leader. No, all of us can lead all the time. I might not be the leader of the team. I might be a team member, but I can still lead because of how I model the behavior that I would like to see, how I go first. And, if I want to see more respect on the team, rather than waiting on the team manager or team leader to show that, I can be a model of what respect looks like.
yes.
I can be a model of what listening and understanding looks like. I can be a model of demonstrating care and concern for others. I can go first. And so leadership is a choice, not a position. All of us can lead in whatever role that we are at. And we can lead in our friendships. We can lead in our homes. We can lead in our communities by modeling the behavior that we would like to see, by
Yeah,
going first and not kind of waiting on others and on people in formal authority, but rather just lead out wherever we're standing. You lead your life. You can lead in a relationship. And so the idea that all of us can lead, and it's really an inside out process, not outside in. And
yeah,
outside in says I got to have the position to lead. Inside out says I lead wherever I'm standing, and I show people what's possible in terms of how we interact, how we collaborate, how we work together, how we create, how we innovate. And I always try to model it and go first. So that's a key learning, is that this is an inside out process and it's a choice. Everyone can lead wherever we're standing. And for young listeners and viewers, uh, again, you're going to have leadership roles where you are formally put into a formal position where you'll be supervising people and the like. But you also are going to have roles where you're not in that role. You can still lead. And you
yes.
can lead in your relationships, you can lead in your life, and you can lead in your homes, in your communities. And it's a paradigm that this is about our actions, our choices, not just position.
I mean, you've used the word paradigm, which is great, and it's at the heart of my question here. If someone's hearing that for the first time and they're thinking, "Yeah, I kind of feel that, but how do I start? Where do I start with that?" Have you got any thoughts on which moves from
Yeah.
a nice aspiration to action and living that in some way? Have you got any
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Here's a simple thought, but I think it can be powerful. So the whole idea is that this inside out idea, if you think of the ripple effect metaphor where the drop water comes down and then the ripple, the waves, they start in the, it splashes and it ripples out. That very first splash, that very first wave is yourself, self-trust. So start with yourself. If you're going to build trust with others, you got to first build trust with yourself. And who you are and what you're about, your character, your competence, so that others can trust you. But it's hard to have others trust you if you don't trust yourself. And then from yourself, you move to your relationships, and then to your team, and then to the organization, and then you ripple out into the customers and the community that you operate in. But it's always starting with yourself. And so building that self-trust is important. And the best way I know to kind of increase your own sense of self-trust, of your own personal integrity, is to learn to make and keep commitments to yourself. It's interesting, Simon. The research shows that the number one behavior that builds trust with other people is to make another person a commitment and then to keep it. And then you make another commitment to that person and you keep it. Yes. And you repeat that process. So it's kind of make, keep, repeat, make, keep, repeat. And then you get a reputation that you will do what you say you're going to do. That builds trust fast with other people. Guess what? That's also how you build trust with yourself. You make commitments to yourself and then you keep them. And sometimes we don't keep a commitment to ourselves with the same respect. We don't treat it with the same respect that we might treat a commitment to somebody else. And so we kind of overpromise, underdeliver to ourselves. An example, I might say, hey, I'm going to get up and exercise in the morning. So I set my alarm an hour earlier to get up, and then the alarm goes off, and I might say, oh, I'm too tired, and hit the snooze, or say, I'll exercise tomorrow. And, and I might not think that was a commitment, but it kind of was a commitment. Yeah. Why did I set my alarm an hour earlier if I'm going to just turn it off? It's in those little things. And so I learned this so well from Admiral William McRaven. He was the U.S. commander of special operations, the elite fighting forces. And when he retired, he was an extraordinary leader. When he retired, he became the chancellor of the University of Texas system. And he was asked to give the commencement graduation speech to all the graduates. And he came in and he gave a speech that went viral. And he said to everybody, he said this, he said, graduates, if you want to change the world, make your bed.
That's right.
Make your bed. In other words, start with a very small commitment that you can keep, that you make to yourself, and then keep that commitment. And then go from that commitment to the next commitment, to the next commitment. And the sense of clarity, of integrity, and power that comes to you will become enormous in those little things. So if you want to change the world, make your bed. And it's really saying, make and keep commitments to yourself as a starting point. So that's just a very simple thing, but it's practical. And, start in the little things. Make and keep commitments to yourself. Build that sense of self-trust. And from that, you'll have clarity and power to build trust in other relationships, and you'll ripple out into all your interactions.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. And there's elements that in my mind I'm thinking, yeah, I've got that. And then elements I'm thinking, no, they're still work in progress.
I'm still a work in progress on it myself, Simon. So you and I are together.
And do you have a third lesson you wish you'd learned earlier, Stephen? Yeah.
Yes. This is what I learned from my father. And it's so if the last lesson was, hey, leadership is, you got to start with yourself. It's inside out. It's a choice you have, and you start with yourself. You look in the mirror, it's inside out. So here's another lesson that maybe gives a different paradigm on leadership, that says, yes, while leadership is inside out, it's still about others, serving them. And so I would phrase it this way, that And this is my father's definition for leadership. And it's one of the great lessons I've ever learned. And it's this: leadership is seeing and communicating people's worth and potential so clearly that they come to see it in themselves. In other words, the act of leadership is to help another person come to see their worth and potential so, that you communicate their worth and potential so clearly to them that they come to see it in themselves. Suddenly, you've given them a vision for what's possible for themselves. And you help them become the kind of person they can be, the kind of leader that they can be, because you saw it in them and you communicated it to them in such a way that they ultimately were inspired to see it in themselves. That's powerful. That's what a parent does with a child. They want to help that child see who they are, who they can become. That's leadership. If I'm leading a team, I want my team members to see their potential and their talent and come to believe it, and that they know that they have a champion in me. That my passion is their potential. I want them to become who they can become. That's real leadership. I'm bringing the best out in others. I'm helping them become the best version of who they can be. I'm helping them see it because I see it first, and I communicate it to them so that they can see it. And then I help develop it and unleash it. That's leadership. So it's not about how just me getting ahead. It's about me helping others achieve who they can be and become. And I see that that's part of my role as a leader, to help others, to unleash the greatness in other people. That's what truly great leaders do. They unleash greatness in others.
I'm inspired by that. That's fantastic. Again, I'd love to kind of just pose these different scenarios to you, Stephen. And if you think about a scenario where you've got someone perhaps who's been performing at a really good level, then something they just go off the boil. Like there's something that's changed. And let's put a situation where there's been an organizational shift, and perhaps they've lost some territory and they're feeling a little wounded by a new person coming into the organization, that type of thing. And so that they have the capacity. It's not like they lack any competence or anything. Got this, but it's like but your trust in them, I guess, starts to diminish as they are behaving in ways that are counter to good results and for them to shine. I'm like painting the picture there.
Yeah.
How do you kind of restore that trust in that person who's behaving in a way that's not helpful, not productive, not helping, say, the team to function well?
Yeah.
Have you got a sense of my question?
I think I do. Yes.
Yeah.
And I would say this, that, it might be, I've learned the great things in life often happen one-on-one. And so you might go to the person and say, you know what? Hey, I've seen what you can do. I know who you are. I've seen it. I've seen how you can work. I know, and, help me understand. My guess is you might be feeling frustrated or a little, maybe even demoralized or hurt with what's happened here and the shift. And, but I want you to know something. I know who you are. I've seen it. I believe in you. I've got confidence in you. And some of the things that I see you doing right now, that doesn't seem like you. I've seen a different side. That's the side I need to continue to see. But just know that everything's in front of you, and I'm your champion. My passion is your potential. I want to help you succeed and do this. And so that if they can see in you that you believe in them and you're their champion, you're their advocate, that tends to bring out the best in people. And so you want to treat people according to their potential, not just their behavior.
Yeah.
And they ultimately tend to live up to that potential and maybe say, yeah, you're right. I'm frustrated and I can do better. They often know. So that's a situation where maybe someone is kind of hurt, wounded, and so they're taking it out with their behavior, but you've already seen better behavior.
Yes.
So it's in them.
Yes,
And so you're
exactly
just,
my point.
in
Exactly
a
my point.
sense, you're kind
Yeah,
of just reminding them. And you might say, hey, what you're doing now, that's not like you.
yeah,
I've seen who you are. I know what you're capable of. And I'm going to treat you according to what I've seen, not what I'm watching now, but what I've seen in the past. I know who you are. And so
beautiful.
that treat people according to their potential, they live up to it. Treat them
Yeah.
according to their behavior, they tend to live down to it. And so you want to, you got to be smart about it. And
Yeah,
people do need to do the right thing. And if they're becoming a cancer, that's an issue that has to be dealt with. And you can say, look,
sure.
this is not acceptable. And I know what you're capable of more. I've seen it.
Yeah,
In other cases, it may be that they don't know their own potential. They haven't ever demonstrated it. And so it might be that you're the one that says, you know what? Here's an opportunity over here, and I think you can do this because I see talent in you. I see something. I'm going to give you a chance. You might take a risk, take a chance on someone, give them an opportunity, and they might say, "Whoa, I'm not ready for this." And you say, "You know what? You are. You can do
yeah,
this." And you believe in them, and you help them come to believe in themselves. And so you'll have both scenarios. People that
yes,
don't know about what they're capable of, and you come to help them. You help them come to see what they are capable of. And other cases, like the one you just described, Simon, where they're not living up to their potential, and they kind of know it deep down. And
yes,
you're
yes.
in effect reminding them that,
I like
hey,
that.
you can live up to something more
This
because I've
feels
seen it.
this. Thank you. This feels like a nice bridge into your most recent book, Trust and Inspire. We were speaking
Yeah,
before we press record about being trustworthy and trusting others. I'd love you just to talk a little bit about that. It feels like there's some nice connection in some way as well. Could you just share the observations that you've had in that space?
absolutely. Yeah. So one of the key, I call these, stewardships
Hmm.
of a trust and inspire leader, versus a command and control leader. Command and control is just kind of the top down hierarchical barking out orders. And you know what? That doesn't work very good in today's world because it's far more collaborative, interdependent. And people don't want to be managed. People want to be led and they want to be trusted. They want to be inspired. So I call it trust and inspire versus command and control. And one of the key things, one of the stewardships is that you are not, that you model the behavior. I call that modeling, but you're also trusting. And so if you think about it, if the outcome you want is trust, you want to build a high trust relationship. You want to build high trust on the team, high trust in the department. If trust is the outcome we want, to get that, yes, we need to be trustworthy because you can't build trust without trustworthiness. So we got to behave in ways that build trust. We have to show the integrity and the intent, the character, but we also need to do what we say we're going to do
Yes.
and have the competence. So we're trustworthy. We earn that. But by itself, it's not enough to merely be trustworthy in order to have trust. It's necessary, but it's insufficient because you could have two trustworthy people working together, but no trust between them if neither person is willing to extend trust to the other, to give it. So, in addition to being trustworthy, we, and especially we as leaders at any level, also need to be trusting, need to be willing to
Yes.
give the trust. So we earn it and we give it. Both are vital. And we always start by earning it. But the difference between a manager and a leader is willing to give trust to others. And part of it comes back to the point that you were seeing that why do you trust others? Because you see their potential and their greatness that's inside of them. And you trying to help them come to see it in themselves. And part of how you help them come to see it in themselves is you extend trust to them.
Yeah.
You give them opportunities. You say, look, I believe you can do this job. I trust you. I believe in you. I've got confidence in you. I'm going to help you. And that extension of trust is powerful. And when you tell someone, I trust you, and here's why I trust you, people want to live up to it. They want
Yes.
to prove that they're worthy of that.
Well,
Now, there
one question.
might be a
Go on.
few that abuse it, but the vast majority of people will be inspired by
Yeah.
being trusted, and they'll want to live up to it and perform better because of it. And so I really believe this, that to be trusted is the most inspiring form of human motivation for all of us. And so we want to be trusted, each of us do. And the people that we work with and serve and lead also want to be trusted. Find the ways that you can lead out in extending trust to others in a smart way
Yes,
to bring out the best in them. It's amazing. So what were you
it
going
is.
to ask? I'm sorry.
I no, it's fine. This is great. I'm loving it. I'm thinking more, working with leadership teams, and particularly if there's some dysfunctions, and senior leadership teams, there's often
Yeah.
dysfunction because of the silo working that they've been on, and they're not really working as a team. They're coming together as a group. And when you're trying to build that trust, there's often a conversation I might have is someone will say to me, "Well, but I don't trust that person. They've let me down.
Yeah.
They burnt me last year." These type of things. So you're saying, right, offer them trust, and I can hear your dad's writings in this in terms of, well, I I don't love my spouse anymore. Well, love them, but it's like, I can hear echoes of that. But there's something around that leap of faith, that risk that someone's then got to manage. And you talked about smart trust being a key part of that you're not just being naive.
Right.
But there's something about, if you're wanting it to be better, rebuild it, someone has got to start repairing and restoring that trust in the relationship. It's not going to mend itself, just by chance. There's something some action needs to be taken, and both can be waiting a long time for the other person to make the move. So
So
I guess the leadership there, just your thoughts on
that's
that would be great.
that's beautiful, Simon. I completely agree, and you're right on. Someone needs to go first.
Mm.
See, leaders go first, and again, the leader doesn't mean necessarily even the boss. I might
Yes,
go first as the direct report and say, I'm
yes,
going to choose to extend trust here. Now, look, here's smart trust. I'm not naive. I'm not blind. It's just not indiscriminate. If someone has been consistently untrustworthy, I might need to address the behavior and say, look, this kind of behavior causes me to lose trust. So I don't attack the person.
yes.
Instead, I address the behavior. When you make a commitment and then don't keep it, it causes me to worry about the next commitment being made. Or when you kind of are spinning everything instead of just telling the truth, I'm worried about what's being said. I'm not sure I fully trust it. That's different than saying, I don't trust you. You're a bad person. No, this behavior causes me to lose trust. So I still kind of can address the behavior, but someone needs to repair this. And you're giving people a chance. And it's very easy to everyone pointing the finger of they're the problem, he's the problem, she's the problem, can't trust them. Well, look in the mirror, focus on your own trustworthiness, your credibility, and find the ways in the areas in which maybe you could extend trust to another, and go first in it, and say, you know what? Hey, let me tell you what I've seen that I really like what you do is this, and I really trust you on this, and you want to go from that extension of trust maybe to a broader one and a broader one, but someone needs to go first.
Yeah.
Leaders go first, and they go first both in being trustworthy, but they also going first in being trusting. And I've worked with these teams too, like you, Simon, and especially with senior teams. The bigger gap in creating trust is less that the people aren't trustworthy, or at least they all view themselves as trustworthy. And
Yes.
that's part of the reason they got to their roles in the high levels, because they got character and competence. But the bigger gap on these teams is that people aren't trusting enough of each other, to each other. They're often pitted against each other, and they don't come together as a team because they're not willing to extend that trust to each other. And we need to. And yes, there's a risk to trust, but I think there's often a greater risk not to trust.
Absolutely.
And so,
Absolutely.
have good judgment, have expectations and accountability around the trust being given. But I think each of us as leaders need to become more trusting. At least most of us do.
So,
And yeah, there's a risk, and you might get burned. But I think it's better to occasionally get burned in trusting than to never get burned but never trust anyone, because you won't create anywhere close to what you could do together. You can't collaborate and innovate if you don't trust. You can't build a team without trust. You can't engage people, inspire people. You've got to extend trust to people in smart ways. So use good judgment, but find the ways that you can lead out in extending trust to others to build that trust. And you watch what can happen. So it's,
brilliant.
You model, you trust, and then you inspire by connecting with people through caring, and then connect people to purpose and to meaning and to contribution. There's, what's it all about? Try to, show the why, create a why together.
Yeah. Stephen, that's amazing. Thank you. And I really appreciate
Thank you.
your openness and the wisdom that you've shared. That's powerful. One thing I'd love to explore just in closing, really, well, just ask you to share with us, what advice would you give to that mildly naive 20-year-old version of yourself that we spoke about at the beginning of our conversation? If you were able to travel back in time and speak to them now, what would you say?
Yeah. I would probably say this, and again, I shared at the outset that I was kind of, this a little bit naive, but very optimistic and
Optimistic.
altruistic self. I would say this: keep the altruism, keep the optimism, keep the hope, keep the inspiration that, most people are basically good. Not everyone,
Yes.
but most people are basically good, and most people can and want to be trusted. Not everyone, but don't let the fact that you can't trust some define how you treat everyone else. So keep the optimism and the altruism and the desire to make a difference in life, and to, to make contributions and to have purpose and meaning, because that is what life is about. So I would say the mantra that I learned was, life is about contribution, not accumulation. I believe that mindset of contribution is a great mindset to have. And if you have it, keep it. If you don't have it, consider it. Because the more you see life is about contribution, then it's about service. It's about making a difference. It's about, as a leader, I'm now trying to serve others and unleash others, not aggrandize myself. And seeing that mindset, having that mindset that it's about others, not me. Service above self-interest, ironically, actually has great self-interest in it. When you help others succeed, you succeed. My father called that win-win. But that's an amazing thing. And so keep the altruism if you've got it, the idea of contribution. If you don't have that in your mindset, I would add it to it, or consider adding it to what you want to do. And then that doesn't mean, though, that you still can't do the other things. That, you can be kind-hearted and tough-minded at the same time. And you can, inspire trust and deliver results, so that you're performing and you're delivering, and, the harder edge side of business, that's still at play. And we got to perform. And you can have ambition. You can say, I want to achieve all these great things. You can keep that, but just add to it contribution. And don't lose that sense of, it's really, there's an and approach to this, but be inspired by the contribution, the purpose, the meaning, making a difference, mattering, having significance. I think that that's important to have, to keep, to maintain and not to lose. And sometimes life will beat you down with a lot of tough things that come, and you can just say, this sounds so idealistic, Stephen. And I acknowledge that it is, but I think there's a power in keeping the hope alive in a realistic and practical way. So that would be my advice.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm not going to add anything else to that other than thank you, Stephen, for offering all that you have in this conversation. It's helped me, and I know it will help our listeners too. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Simon, for having this after dinner conversation that is really, gives me a chance to kind of share some leadership lessons from my life. And the fact that you're doing with this with so many other amazing guests is just sharing insights, learnings, hard-earned lessons to people. And some of these will resonate to our listeners. And sometimes one will resonate more than another. And one insight, one lesson will resonate more than another. But you meet people where they're at. And that's another important part of leadership, is the more you can do that, the better. And so you having these after dinner conversations is an amazing way to do just this. So I love what you're doing, Simon.
Great. It's our pleasure. And next time I'm eating spaghetti and meatballs, I'll think of you, Stephen.
Please do.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I look forward to speaking again.
Much.
Thank you.
Wonderful to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at the After Dinner Leadership Table, and trust that you've got good value from listening to this episode. Thanks for being here. One question for you. The question is, so what? What will you do with what you've just heard? And here's a few suggestions. Number 1, lead with more purpose. 2, mentor with patience. 3, share with pride. You think of anyone who you know that would benefit from listening to what you've just heard, that would help them to be a better leader today or in the future. Please share, like, subscribe. It helps other people to consume the content. And we wish you all the very best of success. And please listen again to another After Dinner Leadership conversation.